Not long ago, through the Force, I felt the death of almost every Jedi. That darkness resonates within you. Did you do it? Did you kill them? Today on the Comic Book Report, Star Wars Darth Vader, Imperial Machine. Stick around and check it out. Greetings from a galaxy far, far away, everyone. My name is Dominic, and today you're watching the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm taking a look at the first volume of the Charles Soule Darth Vader run for Marvel Comics. I'm admittedly still a newbie when it comes to Star Wars comics, but this one was a fun read in my opinion. Why don't we get started with today's review? First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Charles Soule and penciled by Giuseppe Camuncoli. The issues in this volume were published by Marvel Comics beginning in 2017. The volume itself collects Star Wars Darth Vader, the 2017 series, issues 1 through 6. And finally, this trade paperback comes in at 144 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a brief spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at that trade paperback collection. This is a standard-sized trade paperback from Marvel Comics with nice glossy print pages. The cover on this trade paperback obviously showcases the one and only Darth Vader. The back cover as well, we get some beautiful showcasing of some of the art we can expect on the inside of this book. Overall, a really well-made little trade paperback, nothing too special, but no real complaints either. And now that we've taken a look at the spine, I'll go ahead and show you what that back cover looks like right now for all of you to get a reference. Okay, and as far as this book goes, this is my first foray into the Darth Vader comic book title. I know there's been a couple really well-regarded runs of Darth Vader. I know that this one, the Charles Soule one, along with the Kieran Gillen run, are considered some of the best. But I received this as a gift not too long ago, and I decided to read it. I enjoyed it enough that I wanted to go ahead and provide a review today. Some brief context for this book. This book picks up directly after the events of Revenge of the Sith. We even have an extended scene at the very beginning of this book that picks up within that kind of medical, hospital thing that Darth Sidious has Vader in when they're kind of being assembled by all those little robots. We're getting better context where he's screaming no. Anakin, or not even Anakin anymore, obviously, Darth Vader is reminiscing about Padme being murdered and everything that just transpired in his battle with Obi-Wan, and he kind of comes to now this cyborg machine, Darth Vader, and the story picks up from there. So this is right at the end of that prequel series of films, and is a good little interstitial run before we get to things, 20, 30 years later with A New Hope. I will say right from the jump, if you haven't watched the main Skywalker Star Wars movies, then you will probably be a little confused by this book. I think that this kind of comic, you really need to be aware of the Star Wars universe. Primarily for this volume specifically, I would say at least watch the first 3 episodes of Star Wars to understand what's happening with this character. But if you watch the first 3 episodes of Star Wars, then you should be caught up for everything you need to read this Darth Vader run. So plot-wise, like I said, it takes place right after Darth Vader is turned into a cyborg after Revenge of the Sith. We have him getting mad at Sidious, basically saying, you told me that Padme would live if I did this. And the Emperor basically puts Darth Vader in his place and then immediately comes alongside him after he's just built the Empire, and effectively is giving Darth Vader more assignments in his training as his apprentice. And the main task that Darth Vader is given in this arc is to create his red lightsaber by bleeding a kyber crystal. Since Anakin lost his lightsaber during his battle with Obi-Wan Kenobi, he no longer has a lightsaber. So the Emperor himself, Darth Sidious, tells him that he has to construct his own red lightsaber by bleeding a kyber crystal from a fallen Jedi he has destroyed, and taking their own lightsaber, their own crystal, and creating his own lightsaber from it. However, this really complicates matters because since Order 66, most Jedi have already been murdered, hunted down, or have fled into hiding, making them really hard to find. So Darth Vader's first assignment is to find a Jedi who's using a lightsaber, who has somehow escaped the notice of Order 66, is still alive, so that he can best them in combat and create his lightsaber. Through Darth Vader's knowledge of the Jedi's culture, customs, libraries, things like that, he's aware of a kind of anomalous group of Jedi who are sort of outcasted, sort of monastic, monk-like, who he believes may have escaped Order 66 because they're in kind of seclusion, remote, and sure enough, he finds a Jedi there who has a lightsaber. He hunts down this one who's pursued this kind of line of the Jedi Order to try to best in combat. At first, he's kind of swatted down, his robotic parts left in shambles, but he rebuilds himself, comes back, gets a horrible vengeance, and bests this Jedi, stealing his lightsaber. We then have Darth Vader conducting the ritual to bleed the Kyber crystal and create his own red lightsaber. This scene was probably the most effective in the whole comic book for me, because to bleed it, he has to relive some of his old memories, and also kind of imagines what it would have been like should he pursue the light side. He has this whole vision where he comes to his senses and says, what has he done? Goes to Obi-Wan and apologizes, and in the midst of all of that, he basically says no, rejecting the light, and joins even further to the dark side, bleeds that Kyber crystal, and the next thing we know, he has his red lightsaber. After that, the collection rounds out with an issue that has Darth Vader and one of the Grand Inquisitor kind of characters. We see this character in things like Rebels and the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. Really cool to see it in comic book form. Overall, that was the main storyline we could find in this first volume, Imperial Machine. As far as the art goes, I really like it. I feel like the character models are pretty true, other than being maybe a little cartoony. Didn't love that as much, but otherwise, very, very sharp art. I feel like the art almost looks polished, and I was surprised for a series focusing on a dark master of the Sith, Darth Vader. You would think that the comic would be a little more drab or grayscale in some ways, but I found it to be very colorful, very vibrant, with a lot of the images just jumping off the page. And I think that vibrancy was a pleasant surprise as I was making my way through this collection. Another note about the art I want to talk about is because largely Star Wars is a space opera, but it's really a fantasy series, sci-fi fantasy series. I think that a big part of Star Wars, the entire franchise, is world building. And so to create an immersive world with really gripping characters, races, technologies, environments is so key to just the storytelling overall. And I think that that's something that Kamen really shined with in this collection. The different worlds or space stations, things like that, they go through in this comic book feel true to Star Wars, but also really help round out the world. The world feels detailed, lived in, and I enjoyed that. And while he probably could have pushed it even further to give a better sense of immersion with all these environments, I feel like what he gave was perfectly serviceable. As far as the writer, Charles Soule, I enjoyed what he did on Daredevil. I don't know that I've specifically reviewed any of his Daredevil run yet, though I probably should. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that. But I most recently read Charles Soule when he co-wrote with Scott Snyder Undiscovered Country Part 1. I reviewed that on my channel not too long ago, and that was actually also illustrated by Giuseppe Camuncoli, who we see here in Darth Vader. So this is already kind of a collaboration I've seen before, but I'm really struck by just how different this series is from Undiscovered Country. I think it definitely shows the range of some of these creators, and just what Scott Snyder can bring to the table as well. Thinking about this series on a whole, just after reading this first volume, I do think that if you're not a fan of Star Wars, it may be hard to engage with this subject matter, with this material here. I do think as a fan of Star Wars myself, at least the movies, reading this comic was really engaging. It really feels like I get extended adventures of what I've already seen on the films. Like I said, how the story started with that creation of Darth Vader scene and seeing how it was augmented, or all the extra details we got, I found it to be so enriching. And things that I would have never even thought about, like how did he get a red lightsaber? Is there a process that goes into how those are created? I love getting to see those kind of details fleshed out in a full story arc here. I know that this is considered canonical, and I really love that as a fan of the Star Wars franchise. I will say it's also really interesting following a main character that is purely a villain in a comic book. I don't often do that, and in some ways that was a bit disturbing. But overall, it was a gripping read. I feel like these issues really flew by, and again, as a fan of Star Wars, this was a very fun read. But I don't know how accessible it would be to someone who doesn't enjoy that franchise. But hey, maybe if you're a fan of Charles Soule or Camuncoli, it might be worth picking up. I'm not sure. That might be up to your discretion. And I also know the Kieran Gillen run is supposed to be really good. I know I love Gillen from the Once and Future series I've read a little bit of here and there. Let me know in the comments below if you've read Gillen's Darth Vader run. I'd love to know about it in the comments below. I know these things are collected in a lot of trade paperbacks like the ones you see here, but they also have omnibuses that go in and out of print, it seems like. I believe at the time of this recording they're both out of print, but you can still find them in secondary markets and eBay and things like that. Overall, a really fun little read. It was pretty zippy, read it pretty quick with these only 6 issues here. But like I said, I'm still kind of a newbie to the Star Wars comic book world. I know a lot of people are huge fans of it. I'm always looking for recommendations. I've really only read this, War of the Bounty Hunters, Crimson Reign, and then I also read the first few issues of Jason Aaron's Star Wars. All were pretty fun reads, but beyond that, I'm a pretty blank slate. So if you have any recommendations for Star Wars comics, I'd love to hear more about it in the comments below. And if you've read all of Charles Soule's Darth Vader run, I'd love to know what you think about the rest of this run. Is it worth finishing up? Is this a good place to jump off? Just let me know. So far, I feel like I enjoyed it, but I'm curious to see where this goes. I forgot to mention the last little story is this kind of cartoony little mini story. It's basically skippable, but it's fun that they included it here at the back of the collection. And with that out of the way, we're reaching the end of the collection today. This has been Darth Vader Imperial Machine from Marvel Comics, and I think now that we've finished up, all that's left to do is to give this Star Wars comic collection a grade. For a very well-paced and fun launching point for a Darth Vader standalone series, the Comic Book Report is happy to give Darth Vader Imperial Machine a B. Overall, this Star Wars trade paperback collection exceeded my expectations, earning an above-average score. As a fan of the film series, this was a fun, just exploration of stories that happened between the stories I've already heard. The art was competently handled throughout, and there were a lot of truly emotional or gripping moments. While it was a bit disturbing to follow a villain as the primary character, I was intrigued and easily sped through issue after issue. Have you read Charles Soule's Darth Vader run? Let me know in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching the Comic Book Report. Until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and a comment, and feel free to check out some of my other videos. Have a good one.